I thought it was actually very respectful back and forth. You have your positions, they have theirs. Fine. This is the kind of discussion and debate that's going on in America. What do you make of the blowback that you've gotten? And do you think it's fair to say that they were set up?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, that's completely absurd. They also said that they had nightmares because of that exchange, and they're spiraling into depression and all this kind of stuff. Well, what I can tell you is that, this is my first time appearing on any show like Dr. Phil before, and I didn't know exactly what to expect walking into it. But we all had the exact same information going in, which is just kind of like a rough outline of what the show will probably be like, and just kind of basic information about each person that's going to be on the panel. They had that information too. And then I walked into it knowing that I was going to be outnumbered for at least a good portion of the show on the stage. And I came out, by the way, the two quote unquote non-binary people, they had one whole segment to themselves before I even took the stage. I was pacing around backstage listening to them drone on nonsensically for like 12 minutes before I even got out there. And then I came out and it was me versus the two of them. And then they brought a woke professor in who's a communications professor, but somehow she's their gender expert. They brought her in, and so it's 3 against 1. And I had the entire audience that was against me, which may seem like that doesn't matter, but actually optically, like that's a challenge because when as we saw in the clip there, you heard in the clip, if someone says something and it's totally inane and ridiculous, but they get applause in the crowd, it makes it sound like they're right. And so that's another hurdle you have to get over in a debate. And so it's amazing to me that in spite of all of that, they are the ones who go home claiming that they were set up and that they were bullied when it was like 70 against 1. It's completely ridiculous. But here's when they say that it's not what they expected. Here's what they mean by that. They knew that someone like me would be out there. I don't know if they knew it was me, and they might have known it was me. They just didn't know who I was. So they knew that there'd be someone supposedly on the other side. And they've probably had discussions like this in the past with somebody, quote unquote, on the other side. But what they're used to and what they expect is that they're not actually going to be challenged.
They're used to being
they
coddled.
thought that I would. Right. They thought I'd have a few basic talking points and that I wouldn't really challenge them. And what you know about most of the people that espouse gender ideology in general is that they just simply have never actually been challenged on any of this stuff. And all you have to do is pull one little thread and the entire thing comes unraveled. All you have to do is, you listen to all the stuff you heard there. All you have to do is ask, like, what do you even mean by what you're saying? And that is enough to not only make their argument fall apart, but they'll spiral into depression. So it's really quite amazing that
it was interesting where they took it, right? Like a woman is whatever any individual wants to say it is. And this is one of the frustrations of this whole thing. It's like, I think a trans woman is a trans woman. I don't think a trans woman is a woman. A woman is something else. A woman is somebody who is born with certain gametes. This is how it was explained to me by Deborah So, and so on. Like, it is determinable. And there's a clip of you as well talking about that, how it's in your DNA, and you can tell from a skeleton that's 2,000 years old what its gender was. But it's also just growing up as a woman, having the experiences of a woman, and all the stuff that comes with the first of being a woman and so on. And I'm not at the same place as you are. I will absolutely use somebody's preferred pronouns. It doesn't bother me. I don't want my kid being asked for his pronouns though. I don't want to be asked for my pronouns. So I don't mind referring to them as whatever, she, he, whatever it is. But that doesn't, I don't have to give up what a woman is, which is special to me and to most women, in order to be inclusive of and respectful toward them.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to give it up. I mean, that's who you are. To have to be asked to give up the definition of who you are as a person is that's much more than a bridge too far. The other thing that they said there when they were dancing around it is, and I've heard this before, this response of, I can't define it because I'm not a woman. Well, first of all, how do you know you're not one if you don't know what it is? Second, I mean, you're not a table, but you could probably tell me what a table is. You could probably tell me what an apple and a bird are. I mean, you can tell me about what a lot of things are, even though you're not those things. So that, again, that doesn't make any sense at all. And but people like this, they walk around their whole lives and say things that make no sense, and no one ever calls them on it. And that's what's so frustrating for me. When it comes to the pronoun thing, by the way, most of the time it really should be kind of a non-issue, because when you're talking to someone directly, you're not using their pronouns, you're using their name, or
True.
you're not using anything, you're just speaking to them, right? The pronouns only come up when most of the time when they're not in the room with you and you're referring to them. And this idea that someone can tell you how to refer to them when they're not even in the room is narcissistic in the extreme. I use an example on Dr. Phil about it. It's like if I assigned you preferred adjectives and you can only use those adjectives to describe me when you're talking about me. That's not up for me to decide, because when someone uses an adjective about me, it's about their perception of who I am. That's what they're trying to convey. They're not trying to convey what I think I am.
Okay, but let me ask you about that. So, I mean, there is a scenario in which you use somebody's pronouns. Like I'm sitting here with Abby, and I could say, well, Abby, she's a mother of two, right? Like she's here, she's hearing me use the pronoun. So yes, of course, there would be a scenario in which you say it and they're there. But what does it? Because I get this back from my own viewers all the time, and they say, like, you don't have to play that game. That's a biological man. You just call him a man if it's somebody who's a trans woman. And I just don't agree with that. I feel like, life is short. Be more loving. This is how they want to be referred to. It doesn't hurt me. I don't think it really hurts anybody to go with it. I understand it doesn't make them an actual biological woman to call. Like, I just feel like to be loving and kind, why wouldn't I do that? What's the answer to that?
Well, the answer is the first and most basic answer is that it's just not true. And they're trying to impose on you something that is not true, and they're trying to force you, compel you through emotional blackmail, and sometimes through other means as well, to participate in untruth. And maybe if this was happening in a very isolated way, it's just one person that is confused, and they try to tell you they're trying to get you to play along, and so you do. And maybe in that isolated scenario, you could argue that it doesn't really hurt anything. I still wouldn't do it personally, but you could argue. But we're not in an isolated scenario. I mean, this is part of an overall campaign to change language, to change how reality is perceived. I mean, you can't separate the pronoun question from that overall bigger issue of, are we going to retain, a semblance of truth and reality in our culture or not? And the manipulation of language is a big part of that. So I don't think you could separate it.
Let me stay on my devil's advocate lane here, so right? Because I know you debate this stuff all the time. So, and I don't really give that much thought to it. But how is it different from, let's say I dye my hair black tomorrow, and I want you, when you're referring to me, if you're going to talk about me, you're going to say she's got black hair from this point forward. You're going to, because it will be black, but it's not naturally black. And it's not actually black. It's been dyed. So, like, how is it different from that? Like, what the truth is, what it actually is, but I've changed it, and now you're just going to go with that.
Well, first of all, I think hair color doesn't get down to a person's identity in nearly the same kind of way. But also, if you dye your hair black, then even if you dyed it, it is a factual statement to say your hair is black. But I mean, we don't usually, when you're referring to someone's hair color, you're not getting into the particulars on how it ended up that color. It's just like that.
You haven't spent enough time in circles of women, because yes, we do that all the time, and then we move on to the breasts.
I'll step back because I'm not a woman myself, right? So because I know what that word means, but it is still a factual statement, right? To say if someone dyes their hair black, like, it is factually true that right now their hair is black. Whereas if someone says, call me a woman, and they're not, it's just not factually true. I think the better analogy here for using hair color would be if someone had blonde hair and didn't dye it, but demanded that when you refer to their hair, you call it black. Now, you might, again, in an isolated environment, maybe just to satiate this weird person, you might do it, but I still wouldn't